everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Like a Pro. This is your host, Nikki, and today we're going to be talking about designing book covers. And this request is from Arnold Henry 758. Thanks, Arnold, for the request. So let's get started. Today we're going to be designing a book cover that is going to be 9 inches tall by 6 inches wide. So I'm going to show you how to set up this file, and then I'm going to show you a couple ideas for designing this book cover. It's not going to be too big on the actual design because there's a lot that you can do as far as book cover design goes. So I'm going to help you actually set up the file, give you some tips to your design, and then hopefully you can go forth and create something unique for your situation. We're going to be doing this all in InDesign today. You can do this in Photoshop, and actually a lot of the techniques that I'm going to show you can be applied to Photoshop, but InDesign is just a better program when it comes to designing print publications. So here we go. We're going to start with setting up our document size. Now I've already stated that we're going to have a height of 9 inches, so that's going to stay the same for our page size. Now the width is something that we need to think about. We're going to pull some math out here and decide what this width is going to be. I told you that the final size, if this was folded and in my hand, would be 6 inches wide. Well, we know that there's going to be a front cover and a back cover. Those are going to be the same size, so that would make our final width 12 inches, right? Actually, it's going to be a bit bigger than that because we need to consider the spine of the book. Now the spine of the book is going to vary, and this size that I determined here just to show you is not necessarily going to be the spine size that you're going to use. Spine size is determined by the width of your book, which means how many pages it is. And we know this varies from book to book. So depending on your project, you're going to need to think about how big your spine is and then adjust your page width accordingly. So I'm going to accommodate for a 1-inch spine. That's pretty typical, so we're going to work with that. So if our book is going to be 12 inches with a front and a back cover, then it's going to be 13 inches if we're going to add a width for that spine. So now we're going to have a document size of 13 inches by 9 inches. And we're going to leave the margins at a 1/2 inch all the way around. I like to have a lot of space, and if you're going to be designing like a pro, space is your friend. And then we're going to set up a bleed down here because I'm going to take my cover image all the way to the edge. And if that's the case, we want that excess trimmed off, so we're going to need to accommodate with an 1/8 of an inch bleed all the way around. Now, again, if you watched my bleed tutorial, this is a standard bleed. Printers have different specifications, so you're definitely going to want to talk to them about how to set this up exactly so it's easy for them. And now we're going to hit OK. So now we have our blank document ready to go. This is going to hold our front, back, and spine of our book cover. So let's draw out some guides here so we can break this up and know exactly where our content's going to go. I'm going to start with the spine. Let's work from the center out. The best way to do this is to use guides to document where we're going to keep our content, and we're going to use our ruler to do that. If you don't have your ruler, you hit Control R and it'll bring that ruler right up for you. Alright, so let's drag a guide out. Now I'm just going to sit it right here. You don't have to be exact with this, we can actually tell it where to go. So we're going to use math again. If our book cover is 13 inches in width, our spine is going to be determined based on the center of that book. So we need to place our first guide at 6.5. Alright, that's the dead center of our book cover, and our spine's going to work out from that. So I said that our spine is going to be 1 inch wide. That means that we need to drag a guide to 6 and a guide to 7. That's 1/2 inch on either side of our center point. Now we have our inch spine. Another guide that I like to draw out is a guide that lets me know where the text max is, because we don't want our text on our back and front cover to come all the way up to the edge of our spine, because our spine is going to fold here and it's going to fold here. So we don't want text all the way up to that edge. So I like to draw another 1/2 inch guide on both sides of my spine to let me know that all of my content needs to stay in this box around my margins and up here. So everything needs to stay here. All right, so now our document is pretty much ready to go. We're ready to design it. So I'm going to show you something that I whipped up for this tutorial to give you an idea of the possibilities. All right, so this is the same sized book cover. Our guides are placed exactly the same as our blank document. Now you can see the possibilities of your design here. We have a great image that makes a huge statement. Of course, color images are fine too, but as you can see, I've just used one image here, and it floats across the spine and into the back cover just a tiny bit. The next thing you want to think about is font choice here. As you can see, I have some different colors. We have a strong black image, so I've used red on both the front, the back, and the spine to make some color pop. All right, so we've talked about the color. Now let's talk about the font usage. This is really important tip for designers. No more than 2 or 3 fonts. I usually like to keep it in the 2 realm, but you can always add a third if you need. So professional designers really know how to place that typography, and they really know how to limit the fonts that they use. So as you can see, I have a very strong bold font here. This is the same font in these 3 places, and this back cover has the same font as well. And I've offset this very strong bold font with a script font. That's a great way to add some visual interest without having all the same font. But again, you vary the usage. We have a lot more use of this bold modern font than we do the script font, because it makes that jump and it creates something that's really neat to look at, but it's not overwhelming. So you want to pick what font you want to use the most, and then just add a little highlight of a different font, and that does wonders for how this is all going to look in the end. And I do count this logo as a font. It's not too big, so it's kind of a bargaining chip there, but I would, in my design, because I really like to limit my font usage, count that as a font. So I've hit my 3 max. All right, so placement is another thing to consider. As you can see, we have a rotation here for our text, and then we line all of this up. It's not all just centered in the middle of our document. We've thought about placement of our text. So this kind of hangs out, and then it goes right into the D. See, that makes a much better statement than if that was like all the way off to the side, or even if that was in the center. And none of these are necessarily wrong. It's just that when you look at it from a professional design standpoint, it just looks better when you take these little tiny things into consideration. And of course, this "a novel by," it's not a coincidence that it just happens to line up with the word drift. Spacing is a huge thing to consider as well. This looks a lot better that it's blocked in here and it lines up than if this was way out here or way over here. So there's consideration, and I like that this all lines up, so this comes back out and it's almost lined up here. So we have boxes that we're creating, but it's not just a big box. There's movement between the negative space and you looking at this. All right, so that's something to consider, because the title of the book is almost as important as the image in making the statement of what this book is about. And then we look at the back cover. Usually there's a quote back here, and there's a big paragraph about what the book is about, maybe about the artist. So this is just filler text. But we've highlighted this quote in the red, so we have that continuity. And this black box is for a barcode, something you want to consider if this is going to be sold widely through retailers. You're going to have that barcode, and you should have that supplied to you. And then we have just text down here, a website, copyright info, and then again the publisher's name. All fake, of course. But this gives you an idea of some very important things to consider when you're designing. Typography is key, color choice is key, continuity between your fonts and your colors and your images. They should all complement each other, not detract from each other. So I thank you for tuning in. If you have any requests, just like Arnold did with this one, please email them to ideas@nickihart.com, and they may be featured in an upcoming episode. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.